Hello, and today I will be presenting on my interview that I had with Sarah Serigos. Let us go ahead and present. Maybe. There we go. Alright. So, about my teacher, this is Sarah Serigos. She's a special education paraprofessional for the Greenfield Public School District. She also worked and taught for schools in Madison, Wisconsin, Menominee Falls, Hales Corners, and also some places in Iowa. She has done both special education and general education, mostly middle school, but she's also taught all the way from kindergarten to ninth grade. I know Sarah through my church in Hills Corners, and she has known me and my younger siblings for over a decade, and that's why I chose her to be my interviewee. So, questions 1 through 2. The first question was, how do you first react when you first heard the term learning disability? So, she first heard this term in 3rd grade, and basically her reaction is that she just wanted to help those people. She wanted to help them to succeed, even though she was smart enough to do things on her own and not really help anyone. Number 2 was, what misconceptions did she have about learning disabilities? She initially thought that this meant they had learning problems in all areas, not just one, and then they could not live up to their potential. She didn't think really there was a spectrum. She thought you either have one or you don't, and she did not think there were any behavior problems. Questions 3 and 4. Third question is, what was the most rewarding aspect of working with students? And then what was the most frustrating experience related to learning disabilities? Her most rewarding experience was when a student was struggling for days in a concept and then finally seemed to understand. The most frustrating was when she was trying to teach the students something and it just wasn't clicking for them that day. How would she compare students with learning disabilities to students with other disabilities is question 4. She found that students with learning disabilities would try harder to hide their behaviors, insecurities, and failures, and they would fake their understanding to more hide that. There was more of an attempt to fit in with their peers, and they were also more of the class clowns. It's not working. Hello? Oh. Sorry. Question 5 was, what behaviors did you notice in students with learning disabilities? So, the main thing she noticed is that they were the class clown, they tended to avoid others and schoolwork, they would pretend to know it all just to fit in, there was some bullying of others to get attention, more aggression and anger in general, and on the rare occasion, there were increased tendencies towards crime. Some of her students actually did commit crimes in her school, and their learning disability wasn't necessarily the cause of that, but having the learning disability made them feel like they weren't worth anything and they did those crimes. Question 6 was, were all of your SLD students similar to each other or different from each other, or how or were they both, and how so? She said they were mostly different because some have difficulties in reading while some struggle with math. Some students with SLD will still learn faster than others who have SLD. It may also depend on the student's culture. All of them will struggle with social skills and all require differentiation, but these were the only 2 points that she saw were the same in all of them. Oh, my computer is lagging. Okay, question 7 is, what is one story you can remember about a student with a learning disability? So, the main gist of this story is that her student was an English language learner. He was struggling in math, but was still a pretty good reader. There were just some concepts in math that he didn't seem to understand, so the school thought he had a learning disability in math. Well, when my teacher came to his school, she realized that there were actually more math concepts that he could understand, but the thing he struggled with was writing the answers down. So he could come up with the answers to the math questions on his own. It's just having trouble getting the words onto the page. So she had him retested not for an SLD in math, but for an SLD in writing, and sure enough, he met those qualifications. So she thinks that it took so long for him to get a proper diagnosis because his other teachers had assumed his writing difficulties came from being an ELL. And from this experience, she learned not to judge a book by its cover and to advocate for all students. And to this day, that student has been improving greatly in all of his classes. Okay, question 8. What strategies did or do you use to help students with learning disabilities? Those strategies would be varying student output, so she gives them multiple choices on how to complete a project. She uses tape recorders, highlighted text, and graphic organizers, and index card sequencing for those with the dyslexia and dysgraphia. For dyscalculia, she'll allow calculator usage on tests, and basically her biggest strategy is to help students gain a sense of independence. Question 9 is, how have SLD students inspired you and or helped you grow as a teacher? One of the stories she shared was just that one of her students with dyslexia called her to let her know she had become a speech pathologist so that she would help other people who struggled like she did. She also she had more awareness of issues with students with SLDs, and she learned about the signs to look out for. And then question 10, what advice do you have for me in terms of working with SLD students or in the field of special education in general? She gave me a lot of bits of advice. The first one being to see the whole child, not just the disability. She said to be more inclusive, empower the parents, brainstorm ideas, trust your colleagues, to work smarter, not harder, which basically means don't spend all of your time working on something, just find ways to effectively work while still saving time and not stressing yourself out. And then last but not least, probably the most important, was to build relationships with everything that you can. And that is my interview with Sarah Serigos.